TraderMerlin show. Boy, I missed you for the last couple of days. Hope you all did well without me. Big shout out to Alex who's here with us today, hooking me up with those Red Sox tickets. To tell you, it was great. We actually sat right behind home plate and right behind all this mesh right at Fenway Park. And all these screens up so nobody gets hit by a ball. And sure enough, the girl, my girlfriend was sitting there and go, she says, we're not going to get a foul ball here. Yeah, we never give up. There's little holes here. And sure enough, next couple pitches, this ball comes flying, almost hits us both in the face, and end up catching a ball. Foul ball where you should never catch one. Great game. No rain whatsoever, so it was an awesome trip up to the Northeast. Went to Burlington, Vermont. Check that place out. So good to get away and have some fun. Hope you guys did as well. Now, we have a very exciting week coming up. There's a ton of stuff happening. Predominantly earnings. I called it Attack of the FAANG stocks because out of those 5 symbols there, 4 of them are reporting this week. It's a pretty crazy week for earnings season, and it's most noteworthy because of what's happening right now in the markets. I will show you here real quick. Let's go and look at the NQ. Now, you're going to see the NASDAQ 100. It's going to be a little bit ugly just because, well, we had Microsoft report earnings, so that's not going to bode too well. So let's go .D here, show you the daily chart. We've got that line drawn on the NASDAQ 100 at 13,698. That, to me, is a pretty big line in the sand here. Now, as today's price shows, a slight down day. That's really happening in the latter part of the day, but we double topped, really. You notice this high we achieved just about a week ago on the 16th of April. That's a pretty interesting point for us. And if we start to sell off from here, which judging by what happened with Microsoft tonight, we might see this come to this little demand zone or line in the sand much quicker than expected. So will be interesting. I will show you these here as well as we progress through the different earnings, but this is going to be a very exciting earnings season because they're all reporting. So let's start off with the one that did report. We talked about Netflix reporting last week, NFLX, and we'll bring up that chart here just to see what's happened with Netflix since then. So they were the first of the FAANGs to report. You can see that Netflix not only gapped down significantly, but it has not rebounded at all. It's actually down just slightly from where that was. So not a good showing for Netflix. Today was down about 5%, or sorry, 0.1% on Netflix, but just sitting right near that area of demand that it built around the 22nd of March. So not really great for Netflix. Now let's look at Microsoft, which reported earnings after hours today, and I'll give you the whole rundown of when they're going to report. But MSFT, Microsoft looks damn good, right? This is the daily chart for Microsoft. It looks great. It's been making higher highs, higher lows, little rally, and then some congestion. Felt like it was going a little bit sideways last week on this one, and today we saw all-time high put in yet again for Microsoft. Well, if I switch this down and I go to, let's say, a 5-minute time frame, you can see that it still looks good, right? I'm going to put a horizontal line, 2 horizontal lines. I'm going to put one right where we closed, and then I'll do the other one at where the low of the day was, just to put into perspective how much this thing moves on earnings announcements. So there you go. The low of the day was 260.12, and we closed at 262.18 for Microsoft. Now, let's add on the 24-hour time frame here so you can see what it looks like in the after hours. Womp womp. That big ranging day we had, well, we gave it all back. Right now we're at 252, so we're 8 points lower than where we closed at, and I'll put another line there. This is where we're at right now as we speak, at 252.95. So those lines will stay when I go back to the daily time frame, and this helps us to understand kind of where we would expect it to go to. You'll notice that the lower line I have here is right on that where it jumped up to and gapped up to. So that's a logical stopping point for price. There's also a couple more in here. You can see the origin of this gap right there. We can see some congestion as well where it might fall back down to. So tomorrow will be very interesting on Microsoft and to keep an eye on what's going to be happening with those FAANG stocks, because right now it's looking pretty weak. We've had Netflix off to a rocky start, Microsoft as well not looking so good, and I didn't look at the numbers per se. I don't really look at the fundamentals, the numbers anymore. It's just a reaction to it and how people are looking at it going forward. So not off to a good start for the FAANGs. Now, what are the other ones reporting this week? Well, actually, let me show you what else reported this week. Let's see. We've already had, yesterday when I was gone, we had Tesla, right? Here's your Tesla chart. So today, Tesla's chart down today about 4.6%. I'll bring up the 5-minute time frame because I always like to look and see when these things report, how they gap. This was after hours yesterday. They reported earnings, which is right here, when it was at 7:37, and now we're down at, it's really not that bad, 7:03 for Tesla as we speak in the after hours session. But notice that even in the after hours, Tesla has been drifting down predominantly because of what's happening with Microsoft and kind of the whole tech sector maybe taking a little bit of a hit here. So you've got Tesla, we have Microsoft, which we just mentioned. There's your ugliness for Microsoft. And then we'll look at Google. So Google flipped a script. Google's going the exact opposite way. Right now, about 3.63% in the after-hour session. And I saw a question come through here asking about Google. Big Eb says, Merlin, Google might be a short in the coming days. Thoughts? Well, it could be. I mean, look, I don't want to sound vague. Obviously, shorting something, Google has been very, very strong. So shorting something as strong as that is a dangerous task. However, could you? Sure. I guess the bigger question would be, what would you be more interested in doing? Would it be selling puts? Or selling puts, maybe buying some puts if you thought it was going to fall, or if you wanted to buy it at a much lower price. Right, you might be able to get some pretty decent premium. And I just put this line here because it's not going to show up on your charts when I go to a daily. Here's your daily. Notice that line is off the screen because Google is currently up where that line is. So, could you sell it? Yes, you could. What you'll notice here over the past couple of earnings has been a pattern for Google. So let me zoom out here just so you guys can see what I'm talking about. And I'll show you the last couple earnings announcements. You can see the previous one right here, which I will draw a little oval around. All right, that's your previous one. Oh, it's on snap mode, damn it. Ay, come on, Merlin. I love when drawing tools try to go to snap mode, and I just don't want to be there. Okay, so there's your previous earnings announcement. And you notice that it gapped up to an all-time high. You could have said the same thing back then, Big Eb, right? You could have thought, well, you might see this thing sell off and close that gap. It really didn't. It drifted slightly lower, but not much. Then the one before that, you go back about another 4 months. You were looking back here. And draw another oval. Similar picture. Gaps up to an all-time high. And really never filled that gap. So you could, but I'm not seeing any sort of history of it giving up the ghost, if you will. Meaning that it gaps up and then sells off. It's going to have a big gap up tomorrow, right? I could draw that same oval. That oval is going to go right here for tomorrow. And that's where it's going to be for that gap up. So not sure if I would be comfortable with myself buying puts on this. Obviously, the premium will probably drop out of it tonight after the earnings announcement. But I'd be cautious on that one, Big Eb, if you were thinking about it. I really would wait for it to open up and see what it does. It's a bit risky to be trading something like Google, expecting it to sell off when it hasn't really in the past. Chris says, Google's up $85 in the after hours. Yes, that it has. Richard, you are incorrect. Richard says Musk sold all his Bitcoin. He did not sell all his Bitcoin. He even went out and he said they sold 10% of their Bitcoin to prove the liquidity of Bitcoin. You made multiple statements on this today saying that Tesla did not sell their Bitcoin. They sold 10% of it so they could prove to everybody that was the naysayers that it was liquid enough for them to get out of 10% of their position. So they're still holding. So just make sure we get it all back straight. Yeah, Jeff, I agree. I wouldn't be shorting that train either. If anything, I'd be looking at maybe selling puts and collecting some premium because long term, I still think Google is good. It's a great company. So that's the other ones that happened today. Just because we're on earnings, we will go through the FAANGs, right? We got Facebook is going to be coming up tomorrow, Apple as well, after market close. But let me just show you some of the other ones here. Almost everybody beat. It was crazy. Almost everybody beat today. So let's go 5-minute time frame. I'm going to show you a few different ones. Here is GE. They bring good things to life. They reported earnings today. They beat earnings, and they were down on the day. Not that great. AMD also reported earnings today after market close, and obviously you can see what happened there. Big pop up for AMD, so that was good. Visa also reported good earnings, and they're soaring in the after-hour session. What else? Starbucks. Yes, it's all because I started drinking coffee. And they had actually great earnings, and they were down in the after-hour session. So it goes right back to my statement that you guys got to be so careful trying to anticipate an earnings announcement. The two that were interesting, where you would thought they would have been better, is Eli Lilly. They reported pretty bad earnings. They're drug companies. Both Eli Lilly and Amgen reported earnings tonight, and did not look so good in the after hours there. Selling puts on Google is expensive. That's exactly right. Alger, remember, if I'm selling puts, that means I'm collecting premium. I want them to be expensive because that means the more premium is there, the more I make for that one. So let me go and I haven't even looked at the Google strikes. But let's say you're on the daily time frame and you tell yourself you want it. Maybe you'd be a buyer if it got down to 2100. I mean, that is miles away from where we're at. You're probably not going to get much. So let's go to an option station here and see what we got. GE, we're back, Mortimer. Yeah, GE. Been a struggle for old General Electric. Let me see if I can bring up that option chain for you just to maybe see what those options look like on Google. Of course, right now in the after-hour session, it's going to look a bit funky. GOOG. We'll do the L's. We'll do Google. All right, so obviously when I'm selling, we said 2,000. If you're selling, you don't want to sell too far out time-wise. So let's say, what is this? What time frame we got here? This is 23 days out. So let's say we decide to sell the May 21st Google 2000s. Not going to get much. You'd get yourself $2.45. That's really not a lot. Not getting a good amount of money there. The spread's pretty wide as well. You see it's $2.45 by $5. So not a ton to offer there. When you sell a call, you want price to go down? Correct. Yes. If you sell a call, you're basically saying, I'm willing to sell it at a specific price, higher up. So yeah, and selling, especially if it's naked, I would definitely recommend not doing that. It's a very dangerous thing to do, is selling naked calls. Institutions can trade block options outside regular hours. Christy, that's a great question. I don't know 100% for sure, but it would not surprise me. I don't think that there's anything illegal about that as long as they report those transactions first thing in the morning. So, yeah, I don't think there'd be any problem with those guys doing block options transactions. Let's see, what do we got? On Twitter, Musk stated that he sold all of his Bitcoin because what? I saw an interview with him where he said no, he didn't. Okay, I can figure out where I'm getting my info then from. But yeah, what I was reading in video I saw, he said 10% so they could prove the liquidity to it. Maybe he sold all of his personal, but I'm not worried about his personal. I'm worried about the Tesla, the big block. Yes. Okay, I see what you're saying, Algebra. Yes, you would need a ton of money, right? You need a lot to collect that premium. So yeah, I don't know if I would be selling them either. All right, let's go to more earnings. Tomorrow, we've got Apple reporting, AAPL. These are going to be aftermarket. So tomorrow, to me, is going to be a much bigger day. You notice that right now for Apple, it's really been stuck in this tiny little range. Really kind of compressed for Apple for about a week and a half. You've been seeing it stuck between let me get some lines on this bad boy. It looks to be about 135 and change down to about 130 and change, maybe 131. Yeah, so a $4 range is really not too bad for Apple. With regards to earnings, there's a lot of people like to trade these ranges. I would be cautious with that. My gut tells me you're going to see a big move in it one way or another. That said, how would you play that big move up? Well, there are people who will sell options way out of the money, like these two levels here, which as far away as they seem right now, those could be eclipsed in a matter of seconds after the bell rings tomorrow. You're looking at those highs, right around 144 all the way down to about 120. That might be your big range there where you do a spread trade on or whatever. It's this narrow little compression going into it that makes me a little nervous. Now, if we look back and see what Apple has done over its last couple earnings, I think this would be much more indicative of what I think Big Eb was talking about, which is potentially shorting. You see their previous one is right here. They had a big gap up, rallied for 2 days, and then pretty much gave up all of the gap. You can see, I believe the previous one before that was a gap and go, and we still haven't come back down to those prices. I believe that's their previous one there. Could be off just a little bit, but I think that was their previous earnings. Let's see. A long on Apple at 120. All right. Well, cool. Holding on for the new highs. Well, you know what? Here's my question for you, Joey, is what's the driver for Apple going forward? There is actually one new product that I think is awesome that Apple is coming out with, and it's about time. And it's this. I bought these tags years ago. One of my biggest fears in life is that my dog gets out and he gets away and I lose my dog, gets hit by a car or something. So there's these little devices I bought, they're like $50, and they're supposed to link up to your phone, and they'll track if wherever he is. Problem is, the range on those things are horrible. It was just awful range, like 30 feet away, it just wouldn't work. Well, what Apple has done is taken that technology. I'll say that they borrowed it. I'm pretty sure they've copied somebody's technology on this one, but create a device that now, if it's near any iPhone, you can track it. So somebody won't be able to go to their iPhone and find your dog, but because you have the device linked to your phone, and everybody around the world has iPhones, that if you have this little disc that you basically attach to their collar, it will pick up. So let's say my dog runs by Tom Barr's house and he's lost. Because Tom probably has an iPhone, his iPhone will pick up my dog's chip, and I can now look and see where he is, and the iPhone network will tell me where he's at, reading it from Tom's iPhone. That is pretty cool from a tracking perspective. So for those of you who have got kids, you get those implanted in their arms, right? So you know where your kids are at any point. So to me, that is probably the best, most promising thing for Apple. Obviously, their watch did much better than I thought it would do. Seems like a lot of people like the Apple Watch, but the phones, they got more increased competition. I'm just wondering what people think is that next catalyst for Apple to push them up above that 150 mark that they... Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'm asking objectively here because for something to rip through all-time highs, especially after the run that Apple has had coming from. I mean, look at the chart on this thing. It's had one hell of a run. There's your zoom out for a year. It's gone from $50 up to 145 and change. Yowzers! I mean, that's pretty good. Oh, Tom's got a Samsung. Hey, Tom, I'll tell you what. I would actually rather have a Samsung myself. So I saw the camera on that thing the other day. I was blown away with that. It's so much better. Okay, so Apple, the other one that's going to be real noteworthy, Facebook, the F of the FAANG. This is actually a bullish flag formation for those of you who are technicians and like to look at price charts. And you could argue this a couple different ways. You could argue that this line here is the pole, and that the flag is this little droopy part right in here, somewhere in there. Doesn't have to be perfect, right? So some would argue that we are in a bullish flag formation. You could do the pole from there to there or there to there. Really depends on you. I'll do it from this point because I think it's more realistic because it's had the uninterrupted surge. If we do that, and I move from where it might break, which is right about there. Unfortunately, I can't move it anymore. It's to the right, guys. But I'm trying to go the same height as the closing candle. That would put this at a price point. Let me zoom out here. Right above 340 would be the target. If you're using measuring objects, which a lot of people like to use for technical analysis, that would be your target there for Facebook, meaning 342.36, somewhere in that ballpark. If we do get a breakout, again, tomorrow is just such a challenging thing because of earnings. It's always so difficult to anticipate what they're going to report, what the reaction is, and their forecast going forward, which is why I generally shy away from it. Noom says the Apple car in 2025. Yeah, possibly. Are we going to be that excited about the Apple car, or will Tesla already have a driverless vehicle fully implemented by 2025? And if I had to put my money on it, put my money on Tesla. They've got the car already, and they have more data on driverless systems than anybody in the world. So they've already got a massive head start there. Hopefully they don't blow it like Kodak did and lose their lead. But knowing Musk, they're not going to lose their lead. Yes, Big Eb says Facebook is losing subscribers, rightfully so. Yeah, whether it's your censorship, whether it's your privacy, whether it's just the intrusion and selling of data that's pissing people off, they are losing. So you might remember when we had Don Fraun on the show a while back, one of the securities I was bearish on was Facebook. And unfortunately, it's been continuing to rally up. It's just been looking great. Here's your weekly of it. I initially was, I think it was just back here in September, October, I was bearish on it because it wasn't making new highs. It just showed weakness. It was traversing sideways, not looking so good. So my pessimism was growing on it. Well, it proved me wrong again by just making higher highs. So I'll wait and see what happens after the earnings announcement. I may actually go and buy some puts on this one because I agree. I think with Big Eb's right. They're losing subscribers, and I think you're just starting to see more networks show up, which might be more competitive to Facebook. And they've done a masterful job of entrenching themselves in the industry. But the more that we start to see distrust and disdain on the part of the retail investor, the more likely they're going to switch to something else and move out. Joey, can we look at the Russell? Sure. Let me real quick look at one other. So I mentioned we've got on the earnings side of things, you have Google and Microsoft today. Google was up pretty substantially. Microsoft is down. So that'd be an interesting tug of war for tomorrow. You have Apple and Facebook reporting after close tomorrow. That's obviously Wednesday. And then on Thursday, we get the big one. I don't know if it's a big one. AMZN. It is Amazon. So there is Amazon's price chart, which honestly does not look good, right? This does not look really good for Amazon, considering, this is a weekly, by the way, considering where they've come from. You know, they were right around 1,600. We rallied up to about 3,400 where we are as of close today. But the fact we're really not making higher highs and just traversing sideways doesn't bode well for Amazon. However, I still think that they're going to have just historic blowout numbers as they typically tend to do. So that's your major FAANG stuff reporting this week. Remember, all of these can have significant moves on the market. You might want to protect yourselves a little bit if you are in any of these positions. You can be using some of these inverse ETFs. You know, what's the one Tom likes? I think it's FNGD or FNGU. This is the inverse one. Just stay away from this thing. FNGU. But this is also a triple leveraged long. So there's a long and a short ETF out there for this. FNGU is the triple long. FNGD is the triple short FAANG stocks, and really targeting that specific sector. Okay. Echo says Apple needs to get more into augmented reality. Certainly, I've heard they're pushing in that direction. I know that Snap is pushing big time as well for augmented reality, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, so we got FNGU and FNGD. All right. Let's see. Sue, can you, boy, all these stocks you want to look at. What do we got here? Algebra says the new Mac is amazing in terms of computing power. I'm still a PC guy. I'm gonna reserve the PC. All right, so I got Russell, and then just because Christy was there first, I will go to the $DXY. We've looked at the index a lot. The weekly of this has been an aggressive pullback, and we talked about this on the chart of the week that I do for Online Trading Academy, as this line right here, this 91.40 was kind of that line I was expecting it to come back to. If that breaks, your obvious next target is where we are at this exact moment, right? We're right in this area. To me, it's the last ditch effort to maintain an uptrend. What I mean by that is, if I go through, and you could do it multiple ways, but let's just do it two ways. Number one is going through the tails, right? I'm just picking the tails from the low and the most recent, and then we'll go one that goes through the bodies. And I'm more of a body person myself. It has nothing to do with my anatomy selection. But you notice right now, if we use that trend line, we are perfectly at a bounce point. So not only do you have the trend line in force, you also have the demand zone in force. If the dollar doesn't bounce here and show some signs of life, and it gets lower than this, then I think you're going to be challenging that 88 mark here soon and dropping further and further and further. So to me, it's a breaking point for the dollar. I did not think we'd see it aggressively fall like this. I thought we'd stop around that 91.50 mark and have a bounce, but you can see once you broke those lows that go back into March, it was fast and furious. Remember, this is the dollar index. I know it doesn't look like a Bitcoin chart, but still, it's plenty painful for an asset to move as much as the dollar has over that period of time. Now, it's funny because we looked at, Bitcoin dropped 38% in just a few days. Dollar index dropped 2.96%, and that is much more impactful than what happened with Bitcoin. All right, so that was number one. What else did you have out there for me? USO. For me, this is a no trade. This is a nothing trade. You really have you have lower highs and higher lows. So you have what's called compression. And really what that means is you're just going to wait for it to do something. It's not doing anything right now. It's just traversing slowly compressing. Some will call this a pennant formation, a flag formation, whatever you want to call it. You can see the swings are getting smaller and smaller. So I just wait. If you are aggressive, you could say, I'm going to get long once it breaks above these highs from the 19th of April, which would be about 43.47. All right, last one for Christy. Silver. Oh, yes, the silver topic. We talked about silver and gold quite a bit recently. I'm not really, from a technical perspective, I just don't like the chart. It just looks messy. It looks like it doesn't really have any clear direction on where it wants to go. If you are bullish on it, there are some targets right above. You can see we've got this open gap that goes back to the 25th of February, which is, my guess is we'll probably fill that gap. As you've seen this uptrend for the better part of 3 weeks now, we did clear this high from back on the 17th, which is good, although we drifted back down below it. So we're kind of right at a breaking point, at least for the next move to the upside here on silver. I'm not overly bullish right now. I'm more neutral than I am bullish. We can, in that vein, go look at gold, which to me is a more solid picture. I love the double bottom. I love the fact that we're starting to look like a reversal here. If we can get gold above this 1820 mark, I think you'll get a lot more momentum, but we're just in the middle of a pullback right now on gold. Russell 2000, Joey for the RTY. Let's bring up the RTY futures. There you go. And he says, I'm long from around 2190, so I'll just throw 2190 on the price chart for you. We'll make sure that 9 is exactly 2190. Like the buy point, I mean, obviously you're right where it bounced off of. Target-wise, though, this looks similar to what we just looked at with that kind of sideways compression chart on USO, right? It's making higher lows, but it's also making lower highs. So right now is important because that peak that we established on the 5th of April, you're just breaking it right now. So let me mark that one off. There you go. We broke it today, but you're right at it, having a little bit of a hesitation at the 2300 mark on the Russell. If you get a close above that, I think you got a pretty strong surge that's going to take you to the all-time highs, but there's not that much meat on that bone, if you know what I mean. It's just there's not a lot of room for it to move. If it does get above 2300, what are you looking at, 2355? Now, clearly positioned correctly, 55 points on the Russell will make you a pretty penny, but it just looks weak. Right, this looks really weak as a price pattern from February. Now let me show you some of the other ones just to put it into perspective. It's really been sideways and not a lot of strength for the Russell. Here's the S&P. I mean, now you're looking at a picture of strength, right? Small pullbacks into demand zones, big legs out. Here is the NASDAQ 100. While it had a much deeper pullback in February, it's been aggressive and moving to the upside. And let's go into look at the YM, which we rarely look at here on the show. And the Dow is also showing strong uptrend, pullbacks and then bounces off. So I'm just a little wary about going you're long on what the weaker of the 4 indexes. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just if I am looking for something to go long on, I obviously want to be buying the strongest ones out there, whether it's an index or semiconductor or tech stocks. You always want to be buying the long ones. And the Russell, for whatever reason, just looks not as strong as those other 3. What else do I got? Cool. As long as your stops are in there, buddy, awesome. It doesn't matter what my thoughts are or analysis of it is. It's obviously you made the trade for whatever reason, and I hope that you are right. I don't know much about this upcoming silver squeeze. Not that I don't know about it. There's certainly people out there that are short silver, but I don't know if it's as intense as everyone is expecting it's going to be. Obviously, Brendan is more of the silver expert here than I am, so Brendan could probably do a special segment on the silver squeeze. All right, what else do I have for you? There was a couple questions I wanted to get to, and one of them was kind of a lengthy one. And this kind of ties into the show for today. Mario. It's a long one, so let me read through this one here. It says, currently many commentators and traders feel we are in a potential bubble environment with regards to equity markets and crypto. I was not involved in the capital markets during the dot-com bubble and the financial bubble or housing crisis, and was wondering how the market sentiment was during those times. So I'll leave it right there, and I'll come back and answer that one. From my experience, and I've been through a few bubbles at this point, obviously the main bubble-ishest one was the tech bubble. And you have a specific market segment bubble or an overall market bubble or something more fundamental. You can't say all bubbles are created the same. So for me, if I look back at the dot-com bubble, what you had there was a brand new technology that the industry was promoting as the greatest thing, and they were already in it. That the big firms were already in it, pushed it to lofty prices, and then I personally feel like they used the media to get everybody on the retail level in. All the way, right near the top especially, most of the headlines for most of the magazines were sensationalizing it and basically saying, if you're not in, you're missing the boat. You are basically, you're going to be left on the sidewalk. You better get in now to catch some of this because it's free, easy money. When you start seeing those types of headlines, usually for me, that is a sign of the end. And that's what we started seeing in 2020, were those types of headlines. Now, with regards to the sentiment, there's always bearish people, right? There's always people out there that feel like these markets are topping, and they will be bearish until the end of time. And that one little week or month or period of time where those markets crash, they're now the king of the world and bragging about how right they were, but they were wrong for years. I'm one of those because I'm net in my gut. I'm definitely bearish. But I can't hold on to that bias, especially when the market is as strong as it is. Last year's bias wasn't because I felt we were in a bubble. My big short last year was based on the whole pandemic piece. I thought we would see a second leg down, which just never materialized. It had nothing to do with me feeling that the market had to crash because of a macroeconomic piece. It was just simply the pandemic earnings, and that I felt was just going to get crushed. Of course, we had $8 trillion plus worth of stimulus, which just rocketed things to the upside and, well, caused me to take a big loser. Other than that, I am going to let the market prove whatever it has to do. So if you are the most bearish person in the world, that's great. I have no problem. If you're the most bullish person in the world, great. I have no problem. You just have to know when your circuit breakers get triggered and you step out. So for the long side here, if you look at the Dow, here's your YM. At what point do you say that I am now going to be bearish and looking for shorting opportunities? Well, to me, it comes in stages, right? Your first step is going to be right here. Let me put on snap mode. Snap mode, your first shot across the bow for the Dow, it'd be like, let's say it gets below 3350 or 33,500. If it gets below that, then I feel like, okay, that's the point where I might start to look at shorting, but I'll most likely just exit any long positions. Take a little bit of profit because it's consolidating. I'm expecting a pullback. After that, you start to look for other levels where you say, okay, it's gone too far, and now all of a sudden I believe that uptrend is broken. For me to get that uptrend broken on the Dow, I think you're looking at below 32,000. And at that point, that's when you say, okay, well, I'm not going all in short, but I'm going to exit my long positions. I'm going to put my bullish bias aside and maybe wait a little bit or start to build a short position. And as momentum starts to move in your favor and go lower and lower, then you start adding to that position. That's particularly what I would be doing or will be doing when we get to that point. We just haven't had any real clear opportunities this year or last year or for the past few years that were great shorting opportunities other than what we saw in February of 2020. That was a great shorting opportunity. God, that show was so good. The show we did with Steve Moses was just awesome. When we talked about how to protect yourself from a black swan event, and then 2 days later the markets fell apart. That was the trade of 2020 for me. That's for sure. Brendan says crypto in a bubble. I don't believe so. This is one thing that's just been cracking me up is there are certain people out there who are saying Bitcoin is dead, crypto is dead, Bitcoin's dead, and I'm just laughing. I'm like, because it drops so much, everyone is freaking out saying that it's dead. First off, you all know that this is one of the most volatile asset classes around, without a doubt. So you're gonna have to deal with it. Number two, since August, it's up 566% for Bitcoin. And you're now saying that Bitcoin is dead because it dropped 38. No. If Bitcoin dropped 99%, maybe it's dead. It's called a pullback. I will take that trade 1,000 times out of 1,000. I'll guarantee you I'll make that trade every single time I can if I know that's going to move up 566% and only drop 38. Let's do it. Sign me up. Surprising, and all the haters are going to find any little reason to say Bitcoin's dead. Well, look where it's at today. I noticed that the hate rhetoric and Bitcoin's dead talk all of a sudden started to quiet down a little bit. Oh, it's okay. We'll be long and strong. Correct it. Big Eb says those are the people that don't own it or understand it, and I agree. I think that it's just a lack of understanding of it. Is there potential for it to end? Yeah, absolutely, but that is a very, very, very slim chance. I'll take the odds that it's going to keep moving up. All right, what other questions do I have here? Or actually, did I finish this one from Mario? Let me see if I can. I didn't read the whole question here. He says, was there a perception that the bull markets were never ending? Yes, Mario, there was a perception, especially in the 2021 or the 2000 bubble. That was a perception that this is not going to end. It's just going to keep on going, which surprisingly is the same attitude that the markets are feeling right now, that this is just not going to end. So, that has me very cautious, but still have to remain long because that's what the market is dictating. It's interesting to compare it to the times we're experiencing now, even though times are fundamentally different, especially with crypto space. I would separate those two. I think that the crypto space, you're basically looking at a brand new technology that, from my perspective, will probably change and revolutionize a lot of the ways that we transact, do business, whether it's money. We'll see it continue to grow. So that's a separate piece. Remember, when you look at the bubble, quote unquote, that people are talking about crypto, you're talking about something that's really not connected to exchanges. It's not impacted by the market. It's its own ecosystem. They have their own exchanges. They're different. So, if Bitcoin falls 15%, it's not like, oh, Microsoft's going to take a hit today. Or Microsoft is down, crypto should get slaughtered. It doesn't work that way. It's not that same tight correlation that everybody is used to when you think about a specific, like housing sector, right? Housing sector is clearly represented in the equity markets. So if housing takes a dump, there's going to be a part of the equity markets that takes a big hit. You don't really have that with Bitcoin yet. Of course, we don't have the ETFs because we're stupid and we're way behind the Canadians in that matter, or the rest of the world with regards to having digital asset ETFs, which hopefully we'll have here soon. So anyway, here you go, Mario. Hopefully I answered all those questions. What time we got? All right, 36. Tom says, if you expect a range of plus or minus 25%, you don't get worried too often and not for long after a volatile sector. Yeah, it was funny because I still, I was thinking to you guys as I was on the East Coast, because you remember last Wednesday, God, it seems like so long ago, when on Wednesday when Coinbase did their IPO, I sold a big chunk of my big holdings of Ethereum, of Litecoin, and of Bitcoin. I still held some Bitcoin, but everything else I completely liquidated. And, the next couple of days it rallied up. So like Thursday and Friday were big up days for it. I mean, Litecoin was soaring. And I was like, man, mistimed that one. And then on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, we saw significant drops in those crypto markets. And I bought back in. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of last week, it really is showing some nice moves up. And then all of a sudden this weekend, let's see if we can show you the chart here. It had some pretty aggressive sell-offs. Look at this down move in Bitcoin. I mean, yes, that's aggressive. It doesn't look like much, but it was a pretty substantial move. 27%. Funny, it's 27% on the Bitcoin futures on, that's very interesting. Let me real quick check this out here. Let's go to Bitcoin here, USD. Because I had it drawn out on the daily on this one at completely different numbers. And I would trust this one because this is the spot price. Okay, so this is what Bitstamp had. You'll notice here, it says a 38.2% drop in the price of Bitcoin. We had that peak that was formed. Let me go back there. Its all-time high on Bitcoin was, I'm going to round it up to 65,000. And then it fell all the way down to this low here of 47 change. 46.9. I mean, that is a pretty giant swing, but when you zoom out and you look at the big picture, that's a pullback, my friends. No big deal. No big deal. But yes, I agree with Tom. You just have to, you're along for the ride here, especially given how much this thing has moved. This is a significant pullback, but if you line up this picture here with some of the other boom cycles of Bitcoin, namely what happened in 2012, 2017, they're very similar. And the irony is that if you line these up with those pictures, this next move, I mean, it puts Bitcoin at well over $150,000 a coin. So we'll see how it all transpires. But it's been a very interesting. By the way, Ethereum is at all-time highs today. So just had to throw that one out there. Yes, I agree with Brendan. I did buy a little bit on that most recent dip, but I'm good. My holdings are good now. All right. Let's see. I didn't put up your economic calendar for tomorrow. I don't know why. I'm slacking. Here is what we have for today. This was the 27th. As you can see, pretty much green across the board. There are a couple of companies that we did not mention or didn't talk about, which we could if you wanted to, which is namely British Petroleum. They had a really a good number reported. They beat by 79% on their earnings. Let me see if I can just bring up that chart here real quick just so you guys can see. And yeah, there you go. It's funny because the way some of these energy companies work, when earnings get reported, it just doesn't look as good, especially with Dow. There's their earnings. So you can see they jumped up and then pretty much gave it all back over that trading session. But we looked at Google. One we did not look at was Visa. Right, here's your Visa after hours, doing very nice in the after hour session, about 1.5%. But other than that, most of that other stuff was going to be to the upside. Now, here's what's happening for mañana. We have Apple reporting So AMC on the right-hand side, for all of you that don't know, is after market close. BMO stands for before market open. So before the market opens, you've got Boeing and you've got Shopify, which Shopify has been just a wild ride. Hopefully I'll get Larry back on the program here to talk about Shopify, because it has been one of the darling stocks. It's certainly given up a little bit of momentum recently, but still a phenomenal moves up to about $1,100. After market close, though, that's when we get the big stuff. You've got Apple and Facebook reporting earnings. You also have Ford after market close. That's strange because that's a Dow stock. Normally that's NYC is going to be before market open, but they're saying after market close. Qualcomm and Align Technologies, another one of Larry's portfolio holdings. ALGN will be reporting earnings after market tomorrow, and it is right now at a massive double top. God, you guys remember when Larry was talking about Align? I'll put this on a weekly time frame here for you. It was .w. God, when I had Larry on, it was like back in here somewhere in the $100 range. It's at $621. Apparently, when during a COVID lockdown, people are concerned about their teeth a little bit more than normal. But it is forming a gigantic double top, whether you're on a daily or a weekly. And remember, double tops are a great reversal pattern, so I would just be very careful on this one, but it could present an opportunity going forward. All right. That said, I don't think I had. I didn't bring up my economic calendar to show you guys what was cooking for tomorrow, so I'll just have to read those out loud. For Wednesday, if you look at what's happening, you have retail sales for Canada. So, Brendan, you got your retail sales numbers. A lot of good stuff for the U.S., mainly a rate announcement. That rate announcement is going to happen about 11 o'clock, 11:30. They have the press conference, so you might want to just lighten up a little bit on your positions at that time, because what will happen is volatility is going to be wild. Expectations are right now it's going to stay at less than 25 basis points. Don't expect any surprise there. It's the press conference and getting an understanding of what Powell and his cronies are thinking about rates going forward, because we're starting to see inflation numbers rise. My guess is there might be some sprinkling of talk track in the press conference talking about rising inflation and potential concerns there. That could create a little bit of panic in the market, because that means that if there is inflation, the Fed may have to start to bump up rates to deal with that. So that's the U.S. You have goods trade balance as well for the U.S. as crude oil inventories. The rest of the world, nothing too exciting. You do have some CPI numbers coming out for Germany, but other than that, it's predominantly Canada and the United States with the important stuff for tomorrow. So there you go. Any last minute questions here before I wrap up the show? It's an early one today. That's all right. I have a meeting coming up right after this, so hopefully we'll wrap things up here quickly. Adjusted my forward portfolio to 40% crypto in the last 2 months, and now I'm not sure if that's too much or too little. Vasily, 40% crypto is very aggressive, right? And I know Brendan's going to say it should be 100% crypto, but generally, as is from a financial advisor perspective, and I'm not a financial advisor, let's make that very clear. I do not have licenses for it. You generally want to stay balanced in your portfolio. Being 40% in arguably the riskiest asset class that's out there is going to add a bunch of stress to you. I personally feel like from the long-term perspective, that's a fine area, a fine allocation, but you're going to have to be ready for some big swings. I mean, if the weekend didn't make your stomach turn a little bit, then you're okay. If you're freaking out over the weekend because of some of those big swings, then you might want to lighten it up. But 40%, in my opinion, is probably a little bit too heavy for the average person. It all boils down to what your risk tolerance is. But the long haul, the big haul, I think you're okay. Yes, Domesticated Rat says BlockFi lowered their rates. Boy, isn't that you lure them in with the fish hook of a nice, attractive rate, and then you start to drop it. Yeah, BlockFi lowered their rates across the board, and actually it's the second time they've done it. So, might have to shop around and look for another company that's going to do the same thing that BlockFi does. Right now, I just have two BTC there, but yeah, they're lowering their rates, and I think they've gotten big enough. They now have the volume and the massive clientele to accomplish their goals. So let's cut their profit margin a little bit and make more margin for BlockFi. It's unfortunate, but I'll let you know if there's other places that I think I'm going to move my stuff to. Right now, I have just Bitcoin there. I'm still staking Cardano. I'm still staking Polkadot, and that's pretty much all I'm staking. Okay, any last minute questions before I wrap up? I will tell you about these dips are expected along the way to 100K. So, right? Big Eb, when you look at, right now you got Bitcoin trading at 55,000. If your goal is that this is going to get to 100,000, there's no way it's going to move up from 55 to 100,000 in a straight line, right? It's going to have big jigs along the way, big ups, big downs, but if that's the target, you got to hold. All right, Alex, have a great night. Hope you have some great evenings out there. Again, thank you so much for those tickets. It was an awesome time. It really made for a great trip, so thank you so much for that. Guys, tomorrow, the guest. You haven't had her on the program in quite a while. She's been very quiet lately. The old studious Tilly Allison will be on the program tomorrow. I'll get her take on what's going on in the S&P 500, even though it still seems so bullish. We'll see what her thoughts are. You know, she was doing the, what do we call it? The weekly market outlook. That's what it was. But she ended up slowing that one down. Hopefully I'll get her back on track to do that weekly outlook again here soon. But she will be my guest tomorrow. If you guys have any questions, feel free to send them on in at TraderMerlin@gmail.com. Very easy to do. Send me any comments, questions, feedback, and I'll get them to Tilly for tomorrow's show. Until then, happy trading, everybody. I'll see you guys tomorrow.